The other thing is that the slides from today as well, I'll pass those on to District Secretary Carol, and she will make those available to any club that wants them, probably through the newsletter or something like that. So anyone that wants to refresh their memory on things.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Ken. Ken, can I make your co-host, please?
Yeah, no worries.
Right, okay, I think that's everyone now. That's us up to 49 people on, which is a good turnout. So thank you very much, everyone, and good morning. To hopefully will be an interesting wee session on PVG. I'm gonna just close that down. Feel free, if at any point you want to ask a question, just give us a shout out. I'm actually up onto 2 screens now, so I wouldn't be able to see hands going up and things like that. So if you want to either shout out, stick something in the chat, Ken can maybe keep a wee eye on the chat. Any questions that come in, we'll deal with them. Still people coming in here, sorry.
I'll let them in.
You let them in, okay. Right, shut that down and we'll make a start.
Go to mute.
Oh, that turns the sound off. That turns me off.
What?
Right, can everyone see that screen?
Yep.
Good. I've forgotten how to do it, it's been so long. Yes, anyway, good morning. My name's Alistair Robb, District Protection Officer. I have now been doing this job for 10 years. Thought I'd got time off for good behaviour, but obviously not. What we plan to do this morning, the aims and objectives, obviously to try and explain the sort of role and the main responsibilities of the Club Protection Officer. Your club may not have a designated protection officer. In that instance, the job falls to the secretary by default, unless they want to appoint someone. We're going to make you aware of where the Scottish legislation lies at the moment, and the guidance from RIBI, or Rotary Great Britain Ireland, sorry. Show you how to make an application to the PVG scheme from your club, and also decide help you decide which events within your club are actually going to need PVG checking. Your responsibilities as a club protection officer, obviously to implement the safeguarding policy, encourage good practice within your club, and I think that's probably one of the most important things is looking at the good practice side. Looking at your club's events.
Alistair, we still see the first page. We don't see the other slides.
Oh, sorry, Phil. Right, I wonder why that is happening.
Did you start the slideshow, Alistair?
You see that?
On the PowerPoint presentation.
Are you seeing that? No.
Not yet.
No, you stopped sharing.
Okay, why won't it share?
You want to send it through to me and I'll share it for you?
It's okay. I can't understand why on earth. I don't get this. Is that working now? No.
Right, not yet. No.
If you go to the bottom of the screen, there's a green arrow that says share screen. Press the share screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I do that, but that's the point. I need to have the thing open to do that, and it's not.
Email it through to me, Alistair.
I think, is that it now?
Yes.
That's it. You've got it. You've got
That's it.
it. And you've now got the PowerPoint presentation operational.
Right. So,
Yeah, that's okay, Alistair.
Yeah.
right. So we can see where.
Yeah.
You see responsibilities of club protection officer. Is that coming up for everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Sorry. Get back to what I was saying. Sorry. We need to encourage good practice, which is, as I said, was one of the most important parts. Look at your club's events and your procedures within the club. I would always advise that when you're doing your risk assessment for any event, that the club protection officer plays a part in that and looks at any aspects of your event which may have a protection issue attached to them. We need to look at challenging behaviour that breaches any codes of conduct, and it's difficult sometimes, but it has to be done. And also to keep abreast of developments in PVG. PVG is going to change in the next year. There will be a new law comes out, a new law, an act passed, which will change PVG, not massively, but enough to make it interesting for clubs. So where we are at the moment is we have the Protection of Vulnerable Groups Scotland Act, which came into force in 2011. The important thing about that 2011 date is that you will sometimes come up against people who say, I already have a disclosure. And if you see that paperwork and the date is pre-2011, it's no longer valid. So they it has to be post-2011 for it to be a valid PVG certificate. Prior to that, it was under the old system. They were given a certain amount of time to swap them over. If they didn't do it, it's now not valid. You'll then find, if you go to the Rotary Great Britain Ireland website, there is a safeguarding policy for children from 2021 and a safeguarding policy for vulnerable adults from 2021. Those are both based on the English safeguarding system. So although they're worth a read, they shouldn't be read on their own. And you should always make sure that the Safeguarding Guidance Manual supplement for Scotland is the one that you use to make any decisions or any policy advice given. The English ones, we have been fighting for quite a while now to get our own Scottish policy written, and hopefully we'll get it done soon once they agree to it. They seem to forget that their situation in Scotland is very different from the English one. But all of those, every single one of those is available to download from the RIB website members section. The things like the safeguarding policy for children, the English one, I think is 70 odd pages long. I mean, it's a real dreadful read. But it is there if anyone that wants to go ahead and read it. The Protection of Vulnerable Groups Scotland Act is available online. You can read that online, and it's worth having a glance over. Looking at compliance within Rotary, we have various compliance things. What I would say is compliance is a legal requirement. It's the one part of Rotary that we don't really have any options with. We have to comply with the guidance for health and safety, data protection, PVG, inequality and diversity. And failure to follow the procedures could possibly make it difficult if there had to be a claim against the Rotary insurance. First thing they're going to ask is, have we followed the correct procedures? And if we haven't done that will make it difficult for us. And that is why every year we're asked to do this, sign this compliance statement. As a district has to sign the compliance statement, and each of the clubs individually have to sign their compliance statement and send it into the district secretary. Again, that's just something that we can keep on record, just to say that a club has acknowledged that we have these policies and that they're going to follow them during the course of the Rotary year. Again, just to reiterate, the English and Scottish systems are very, very different. We have this policy supplement for Scotland, which we should read alongside the other protection policies. But the main point of interest, and this is where this differs slightly from the English system, is that the rule says clubs cannot offer regulated work to any person who is on the list of barred individuals. Now, we're going to cover what regulated work means. But a barred individual, the only way we can find out if a person is on the barred list is to make an application for PVG scheme membership, or if the person's an existing member, to ask for a scheme membership record update. That's the only way we can find out if that person is on the barred list. So we really need to be checking that first of all before we offer anyone regularly. So what is regulated work? Well, there is a 5-stage assessment process, as you can see here. Is it work? And basically anything that we do that's going to involve kids or protected adults would be classed as work in some form. Who are we working with? Again, children, people under the age of 18, or protected adults. What is it they're doing? Is it their normal duties, and are there any exceptions? So we'll go through these one by one. First stage, is it work? Now, the definition of work is quite broad, but it includes any paid, unpaid, contract, voluntary work, anything like that. To put into Rotarians, if we're transporting people, being part of a rota, supporting Interact or RILA, Rota Kids rather, RILA mentors, and also doing anything online. If any of the clubs have a WhatsApp group that involves RILA and things like that, these are also classed as work activities. Also, anyone who is directly managing, supervising or recruiting a person to do regulated work. So that may well mean the club secretary, it may mean the club president, but people who are directly managing, supervising or recruiting a person doing regulated work as well should be part of the scheme or consideration for the scheme. Next thing is, who are you working with? There's two parts here. There's children, again, very simple, an individual aged under 18 years. No arguments, that's the definition of a child as far as the PVG Act is concerned. And what we have is called protected adults. Now, you will see the use, again, even in the title, protecting vulnerable groups. But vulnerable is not a definition used in the law in Scotland. It is protected that is used, not vulnerable. And there's a very clear definition of a protected adult. And that is an individual aged 16 or over in receipt of one of these following things. So we have registered care services, health services, community care services, welfare services. If I give you some examples, welfare, for instance, welfare services. The service is provided to a person of age 16 or over. It's delivered on behalf of an organisation. It requires training to be undertaken by the person delivering the service. There's a frequency involved with it, and it involves either a contract agreed between a service provider and a recipient, or it's personalised to a particular adult's needs. Now, I'm not going to go through there's definitions for each of these. I'm not going to go through them. The reason being, it is highly unlikely that as Rotarians we would ever be in a position where we are dealing with an adult who at the time we're dealing with them has protected status. If I give you an idea of how kind of daft it is, at the moment sitting here in this room, I am not a protected adult. If I go on Monday morning to the dentist, the minute I step into the dentist's office, I'm in receipt of a health service at that point, and therefore I'm a protected adult for the time that I spend in the dentist's office. As soon as I come out again, I'm not. For Rotary, where that comes into play, for example, if we're dealing with elderly people who are perhaps in a care home, whilst they are in the care home, they are being provided with care services, welfare services and health services. If they come out of that care home to do an activity with Rotary, out with the care home, they are no longer in receipt of those services and are no longer a protected adult at that point. If they're deemed able to come out of the care home to come to one of our events, they are not a protected adult at that point. However, if they come to that event and they bring with them a carer, then they are a protected adult at that point. So it's a wee bit strange there, but that's how the system works. So what are you doing? There's got to be an element of one of the following. There used to be an element of caring involved, teaching, instructing, training, or supervising one of these protected groups, being in sole charge of the protected group, unsupervised contact with a protected group under arrangements that have been made by another person, and providing advice or guidance to a child or children or protected adults, which relates to physical, emotional well-being, education or training. So there has to be an element of one of these involved. Sometimes your contact with children, I'll give you an example. Today, our club is at a gala day. And we were asked to come along. We have a couple of costumes. We were asked a couple of Rotarians to dress up in the costumes and entertain the kids. And they asked us if we had PVG clearance for that. And the answer was no, we don't need PVG clearance. We're not caring for the children. We're not supervising them. We're not teaching, training, or working with them in that way. We're not in sole charge of them. Therefore, at no point, all we're doing is entertaining kids. There is no need for a PVG to do that. So, again, these are probably one of the most important parts is that this is involved. Is it our normal duties? Well, it says here if it appears in a job description, but by that what we mean is that, you know, if part of your regular duties within the club, for example, is being on a rota to do rota kids or to do interact or something like that, if it can be reasonably anticipated and if it occurs regularly, there's no frequency quoted in the Act, but regularity starts once the action has taken place more than once. They don't even designate in what period of time. I would suggest annually is about as far as we would want to take it. And will any exceptions apply? This, again, is quite an important one. We have to look at what's called the incidental test. And basically what that means is the activity that these children or protected adults are taking part in, is it purely aimed at children or protected adults, or are they there as part of another group, a different group? So if you, the example given here, a community yoga class, and you'll get some kids coming along to it, you'll maybe get some adults with carers coming along or something like that. That is not targeted at those groups, therefore they're incidental to the whole thing, and they don't require to have PVG clearance to take part in that. So we'll do a couple of wee case studies. So we look at primary school Rota kids or high school interact. Is it work? The answer to that is yes, it is classed as work. Who are you working with? Well, it's children, so we're passing that part of the test. What is it you're doing? Well, you're leading discussions, you're doing a bit of teaching and instructing with the kids, so it passes that part of the test. Is it the normal duties? Well, yeah, there's probably going to be a rota set up or something like that. So there is no doubt at all in those when Rota kids and interact, you need to be a PVG scheme member because you are performing an instructing role, and you also potentially have non-supervised access to the children. So that's a fairly straightforward one. Yes, PVG is required for Rota kids or high school interact. Now, one of the main questions I get, and I had this when I put out the call for this meeting, and I had a reply from someone saying, I work in a school and I have a PVG already, so I don't need to do this. I'm afraid that's not the case. The biggest question I have is, I'm a teacher in the school where it's taking place. Do I still need to add Rotary to my PVG scheme membership? The answer is yes. I'm going to try and explain why that's the case, why you need to have 2 PVGs. So, meet Bob. Bob is a teacher. He's also a scout leader, so he has had to get a PVG check done for that. He's a Rotarian, and he's volunteered to be a Ryla mentor, so he's had to have another PVG check done for that. He also helps out with his kids' football team. He's a coach for the football team. And in the little spare time he has left, he's a volunteer driver for disabled adults. All of those things have required Bob to join the PVG scheme. And he wonders why he needs 5 different PVG scheme memberships. The reason's quite simple. If Bob ever does anything a bit naughty, then if he's convicted, the information about that conviction will be sent to Disclosure Scotland. If he only had 1 PVG clearance as a teacher, then they would only contact the school and let the school know that Bob had been naughty and shouldn't really be teaching kids anymore. The rest of the groups that he's involved with, Scouts, the football, Rotary, would know nothing about it because he wouldn't be a PVG scheme member for those groups. So he has to be PVG checked so that the Scouts get to find out, that Rotary finds out, the kids' football team find out, and the driving job is found out as well. So that's why we need full coverage of PVG for every group that you're providing regulated work for, not just for one. And team, I think that the reason I'm asked this question so often by teachers especially is because I think when the scheme was first introduced, and this was my feelings as well, the way it was explained originally when it first came out in 2011 was that you got one PVG and that would cover you for everything. And I think that was kind of stressed to teachers and people like that needed it as part of their job. And actually, when the scheme developed, they realised it wasn't feasible to do it that way and that we had to go do record updates to add other people on. So Steve Wright has raised his hand. Steve.
Yeah, I believe I understand. I agree with what you're saying there, Alistair, but I've got a PVG with the Scottish Ambulance Service. I phoned and spoke to Disclosure Scotland and they found the PVG and I said, do I need one for the Rotary? And I was told no.
They gave you the wrong information, Steve.
That's what I believe as well. But so in other words, yeah, I need to get that changed.
Yeah, but that is absolutely incorrect.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay. So
Aye.
someone else?
Yeah.
Robert.
On that, I believe that you get as a simplified version of the PVG, which you get your name registered. For the Rotary Club would get their name registered on the PVG. You only have one PVG. It's only 2 pages.
It's a different entry onto the system, Robert. It's we have what's called a scheme record statement, which is an initial application, and then we have scheme record updates. So when we add extra people and we use the update, but
which is a much simpler form.
Well, it's no longer a form, Robert. They've changed the it's all done online now, so that it's exactly the same. It's just a different box that's ticked on it now. So
that's fine because it's online. It's easy to do, but you've got to be able to work it online.
No. I mean, it used to be. I think in the old system, the update form was only 4 pages long, but the initial form was 8 pages long.
Yes,
it was horrendous. Yes, but now it's just a 1-page thing. It's straight. Good. Joan has put her hand up as well. Joan, you're on mute. No, okay.
So I'll search Hilary Gordon here.
Can you hear me now?
Joan?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, sorry, I think I was on mute. Yes, Alistair, so some of our Rotarians visit a local care home. So clearly these are protected adults.
Yes.
But they don't need the PVG for that. Or would they?
What are they doing when they're there? Is it
they're just befriending, just giving a little bit of communication, a little bit of social interaction.
Oh, that is my gut feeling initially with that is yes, they do need PVG clearance.
They do need it. Right,
so.
right, okay.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can double check. I can ask the question with Disclosure Scotland, but my feeling is yes, they do.
That they would. So it would be Rotarians that had PVG then that should be on the rota, and not just any Rotarian that's got the time to visit.
I think so. Yes.
Radio, Alistair. Thanks for that.
Okay, no problem.
Alistair, it's Mary Watt here. Can you hear me? I can't find the raised hand on my screen.
Okay, Mary.
Can I talk to you about Kids Out in Aberdeen?
Yeah.
Do Rotarians who assist with Kids Out all have to be PVG'd?
No.
Thank you.
Simple as that. No.
Alistair, Hilary Gordon.
Hi, Hilary.
Hi. It was just to come back to Steve Wright's question to you. What I would say is to Steve is that saying that you're in Rotary doesn't require you to have a PVG. It's the actual task or activity that you're involved in. So Rotarians isn't a general requirement for PVG, but taking part in like Rota Kids would be.
Yes, well, sorry, Hilary, I did mention what I was doing within Rotary, and I was involved with schools, etc. obviously through the youth competition, but individually with schools. But she still said that because of the SIS PVG that I was covered for that, and I wasn't sure about that. So anyway, thanks.
Can I just check? We do care homes, but we go for bingo. Do we need PVG for that?
I would suggest probably not for bingo, because I would expect you wouldn't be you're not providing any teaching, training, instruction, caring.
No, there are other carers there usually at the time, sort of helping out.
I think that would probably be okay, because you're not interacting one-on-one with them. You're yeah, I mean, again, I can check that for you, but my gut feeling is no, you wouldn't require it for that one.
Okay.
Yeah. And John Milne. Nope.
You're on mute, John.
So, sorry, I was just saying, Alistair, we checked some years ago as a club, because we've done for many years bingo sessions in a couple of care homes. And it was always our understanding that because of the nature of what the bingo session involved, and there were always other staff in the room, that it was the PVG wasn't required for that activity.
Yeah, that would be my feeling as well, John. I don't think it's entertainment really, isn't it? Which doesn't fall under the scope of the.
Yeah. Can I do a follow-up question, also, to go back to being in contact with learning disabled adults and Rotarians helping as volunteers in a club that supports adults? Now, my understanding has always been that although they're Rotarians helping another charity, it's that charity's remit to do the PVG for them as a volunteer, not for Rotary to do the PVG. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't agree with it, John.
Right.
I would say that if you're there as a Rotarian, if you're there as a Rotarian, then you should have a PVG done for Rotary as well.
That would be my view as well, Alistair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Aileen, I think.
Hello there. It's actually for a question for me, although I'm a retired primary head teacher, so I've been PVG'd, but it's out of date. But my husband has taken over youth. Now, anytime we've gone into schools, he's not alone with the children. You could have a full assembly, but there's either a teacher, teachers, pupil assistant. He doesn't require a PVG because he's not, is that correct?
It really would depend, Aileen, on what activity exactly he was taking part in. I mean,
telling them about the competitions, the youth competitions.
All right, no, that would be fine. That's
I thought that.
It only really comes in,
it
only really comes into play with things like Rota Kids and Interrupt, where you're actually spending time on a weekly or fortnightly basis with the kids.
Yeah, and that's the same, because I go in and support a probationer for the writing, but she's in the class, I'm in the class, and a pupil assistant's in the class. So she is the one who has the PVG, and she is not leaving me in the classroom myself with the children.
It's not just about one-on-one contact, Aileen. If there's an element at all of you providing teaching, training, or instruction to the child, then that requires a PVG.
Interesting, because that didn't used to be what it was, but if it's, okay.
That's certainly the way it goes now.
Okay, thank you.
Joan, have you put your hand up again?
Yes, I have, Alistair. So just listening to that last lady, what about the primary school quiz?
Not required.
Not required. Okay, I've just taken over this role from Janet, so I'm trying to get my head around it all. So yes, thank you for that. So not required for the quiz. Okay,
The school quiz is an annual event, and you generally only meet those kids once.
yes,
Which,
yes,
you know, there's no degree of regularity there, so it's fine.
perfect, thank you.
Okay, let's look at kids out there.
Safety officer, yeah.
Children's outing. So we've got
Gosh, I forgot about started at 10.
children's bus trip. It's organised by your Rotary Club. There's a Rotarian drives the minibus. 25 children, 3 teachers and 6 Rotarians on the bus. You collect them from the school and you return them back to the school afterwards. So, is it work? The answer to that is yes. Who are the Rotarians working with? It's children predominantly there. What will they be doing? Well, they're going to drive the bus, and they're going to help the children and the supervising teachers. But there's no further consideration necessary as far as the PVG scheme goes. There is no teaching or instructing element there, and the children are under supervision by teachers, and it's a one-off event. A one-off event is probably the most important thing there. It is a single day out. It's not a multiple thing. Where it only happens once, there is no need for a PVG. An outing for the elderly. So your club takes elderly people out on a coach for afternoon tea. It's open to any older people, but there's usually some people in the local care home that come along. 3 Rotarians go along on the day. And is it work? Yes. They're working with older people. Some are protected adults whilst they're in the care home. But as I said earlier on, as soon as they're outside of that environment, they're no longer protected adults. This is where I come back to this again, that we hear people use the phrase vulnerable adults. It no longer applies, that the law is very clear on what the protected adult status is. And this group at this point in time do not class as protected adults. So no consideration needed for PVG. So the Rotary activities that always require PVG scheme membership. RILA mentors and RILA activity leaders. We have 2 people who lead our RILA, Ros and Gavin, and anyone that they recruit as a mentor or an activity leader for the week, they'll make sure that they're put through PVG scheme membership beforehand. If you have any involvement regularly with Rota Kids within your club and any involvement with Interact within your club, these are both things that need to have PVG scheme membership. If we're involved, I don't know if there's any going on at the moment, but youth exchange within the district, anyone who is a host parent, anyone that's doing the driving and the organising of the youth exchange, all should have PVG scheme membership. Clubs that are involved with young carers, anyone who's providing respite camp activity leaders, again, require PVG scheme membership. Riding for the disabled, which I believe is only one club, I think it's only Dundee that does that. But riding for the disabled also requires PVG scheme membership. The following do not require PVG scheme membership when they're done in what I call the standard format. Mock interviews, I think quite a few clubs do mock interviews. It's a one-off. It is not something you'll know, unlikely to see the same kids on multiple times. So mock interviews would not be classed as requiring PVG scheme membership. Interviews for your RILA candidates, no. Santa Sleigh, no. Kids Out, no. And any of the competitions, young musician, young artist, young chef, any of those things, generally in their standard formats should not need PVG scheme membership. There are some exceptions to that, possibly. I know a couple of clubs who have, I think for young chef, have done a bit of mentoring and things beforehand and a bit of help for the kids, that would then involve multiple contact with the same young children. So it possibly in that instance would require PVG scheme membership, but standard format where the schools are doing all the preparation, Rotary only organises the competition, it shouldn't be necessary. So how do we now apply for PVG scheme membership? As I said, the application is now done online. The first part is to contact me, and I will send you by email the form that you see on the screen there. The important parts for that form are to get the email address absolutely spot on. The rest can we can get away with a few mistakes here, but the email address has to be right. I've had an issue this week with someone already where the email address was put in wrongly, my fault. But what we need really is the name, the date of birth, the email address, and the address, the home address. Some other information is the applicant already a member. This is more so that we can make sure that we're sending for the right forms or the right application. So are they already a member of the PVG scheme? This is what we spoke about already. And if they are a member of the PVG scheme already, is that membership for working with children or is it working with protected adults? And then the membership for Rotary, is that for Rota Kids? Is it for Interact? Is it for RILA? What is the reason for the thing? And then the ID verification. Now, ideally, the president or the club secretary would sign to say that they had seen 2 forms of ID from that person: birth certificate, passport, some sort of ID card. I've had things like gun licenses and that used in the past as well. Depends what they have, and driving license. But any 2 of those, just to confirm identity. Email that form back to me. What happens then is I have to go online and put that information into an online form, which goes off to VSDS, Volunteer Scotland Disclosure Services. They then contact the applicant directly. That's why it's so important that the email address is correct, because they will email the applicant directly to get the rest of the information that they need. It doesn't go onto an 8-page form anymore. It's all done directly between the applicant and Volunteer Scotland. That, I think, at the moment is taking around 2 to 3 weeks to complete that part, and then probably another week or so to get the finished thing through. When it's done, when the PVG scheme membership is granted, that will come back to the applicant, and then I will get a copy. I get a copy a wee bit later, further down the line, so I can confirm that person either has it or does not have it. If something arises where the PVG scheme membership is declined, and that person is placed on the barred list, I don't get the reasons why. I don't get to see the reasons why that's happened. It is purely just I get told that person is on the barred list, and that's it. So I'll take some questions now. The first one I think was David. Go ahead, David.
Hi, yes, it's going back to just what you said before, the minute before we started talking about the form. If a club gets a third party, for example, a local chef, to mentor our young chef candidates, is the club responsible for the PVG, or is it the restaurant or the chef themselves?
If the chef is working with the kids on behalf of Rotary, then it's Rotary's responsibility to get him PVG checked. I have had that happen once before, David. I know of one club that had to PVG check the chef doing that. So that I can say with certainty it is the Rotary Club's job to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Sheila?
Does the person validating the ID have to be a member of the PVG scheme?
No, no. Just a person of responsibility within the club.
Okay.
Phil Ross?
Just, are there any fees for the individual, the club or the district, or because we're volunteers, is that all the fees covered?
We make our applications through Volunteer Scotland, which means that everything's done free of charge.
Thank you.
If you make your application direct to Disclosure Scotland, I think there's a charge now of about £60 or £70 for it. But if we put it through, Volunteer Scotland Disclosure Services, it's all free of charge.
Thank you.
Ken?
A couple here sitting in the question. One was from Phil Ross, interestingly. So Phil, you can go and put your one.
Okay, I'll do it again. I had somebody who was driving RILA participants to and from the bus in Dundee. I wondered whether they had to be a member. That's obviously done once or twice a year at the beginning and end of RILA, but it may be repeated annually. So that was the single off use one was questioning there. And also related, and I think this is probably more safeguarding, in this particular instance, the two children were female and the driver was male. So we made sure there was a second person in the car with them, and it happened to be a female. But I was just wondering whether that's they needed to be a member.
I suppose technically they should, Phil.
That's what I guessed.
But I would say if we use common sense here and make sure that there are always two adults in the car, you know, never allow a Rotarian to be in a position where they're on their own with a protected group, then that would be enough mitigation, I would expect.
Yes, we were most concerned about safeguarding, so that's what we arranged. And obviously, in this particular instance, there wasn't time to double check whether the individual had a PVG membership. But I think in future, we should make sure that we're prepared for that.
It's something that came up before in my old club when I was in Leaving Club, because they used volunteer Rotary drivers to take young carers to an activity centre, and it was done, I think it was 3 or 4 days out of a week that they had to do this, and I kind of insisted at that time that they made sure that there was 2 Rotarians in every car, so that no one was doing it one-on-one. But I think that's the best mitigation for it, is just to make sure you're doubled up all the time, Phil.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, another question sitting there then is from Arbroath. They support Age Concern outing once a year, transporting people for a short drive in cars. Does that need a PVG?
Once a year, I would suggest not.
And one from Tony O'Neill in Forest. Is a further application required if the person changes their regulated position within the club?
Officially, yes.
That's it. And Rose had her hand up.
All right. Yes, I'm not on mute. It was just to reply to Philip's query. Generally, all the RILA candidates, because the applications are online, we know all the candidates who are not being transported to the bus by their parents. Kirriemuir was a very specific situation. And there are cases where candidates don't have the parental support to be taken to the bus. So we do try and arrange individually with each RILA club contact and in the wider club to make sure that there are no candidates travelling on their own. And yes, you're right, it is a safeguarding issue. So we always try and make sure there are, well, definitely 2, and I'm happy to know about the PVG for future. So it's very much an individual thing. It's not an en masse people take. candidates to the coaches. We know exactly who we're expecting to drop off candidates at the bus, and the mentors waiting at the bus know exactly who they're waiting for at the moment. So hope that maybe helps a bit.
Yes, I think that does, Ross. I think my issue with the PVG is, like as you said, with Kirriemuir, it was slightly unusual because it was quite a churn in who was going, and so it was late, and so there's not time to apply for a PVG in that situation. So we made sure we had the safeguarding, and we had 2 genders in the car with them. So we covered all that side. But I think it sounds like, if we've got somebody who may be volunteering for that, that's sufficient justification to apply for a PVG. Because I know you're not allowed to apply for a PVG on spec, but I think if you think it is probable, then that would be justification. But Alistair can clarify that one later.
I mean, I think, Phil, the way you described it there, it was almost an ad hoc, right? Who's available to take a couple of kids to meet the bus, and that is a situation that would never require a PVG because it's not part of someone's normal duties.
Okay, it sounds like it's just an edge case, and it's clearly just on the cusp. But thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Rose. Okay, we're almost at the end now. We're okay for time. Yeah, we're not too bad. Just looking at individual clubs' activities, we've spoken already about the things which will definitely require PVG scheme membership, things that we know about within the district already. But if your club has an activity that you're not entirely sure about, Phil's just spoken about one there, for example, either the club or the AG, just contact me. Drop me a wee email or give me a phone or whatever. We can then look at carrying out an assessment of that activity. I will normally, 9 times out of 10, take advice from Volunteer Scotland Disclosure Services. So I'll give them a call and run it through them, run it by them, before we make a decision about whether scheme membership is required. So I always try and throw it up the tree and let someone take responsibility for it elsewhere. But please use myself, Ken as well. Ken has done the training now as well, so you want to contact Ken. We can give you the advice that we need, but also we know exactly who we can call to get those decisions made, and just make sure that we're all properly protected. There are possibility, the possibility does exist that we could as a district be audited. Now, that has never happened to us that I'm aware of. I know it has just happened in England, and that DBS in England have just chosen Rotary in England to have an audit. So it's important that everything that we're doing is above board in case that happens. Phil, your hand's up again.
Yes, slightly complicated, I guess. If you've got a Rotarian who's a scheme member, let's say because they're working with Rota Kids, and then later there's another activity that they're doing which you decide that they need PVG for, they don't need to apply a second time to the scheme because Rotary will already be notified because of the first membership. Because I'm sure that when you apply, you have to say what they're doing. You can only apply for a particular activity. You can't apply on specs. But if they suddenly start to do another activity which is regulated, they don't need another scheme record.
The only time I would suggest, Phil, where you would need a second scheme record was if you were changing the group that you were working with. So if you were going from children to adults or adults to children, I think that would definitely, because the criteria for scheme membership for those 2 schemes are different. So, yeah, if you're working with protected adults, there are different things they're looking at. There are convictions, let's say, that would not be relevant for children that may be for adults.
Yes. I mean, I'm a volunteer sports coach, so I have both disclosures for children and adults because I work with both. But and I always assume that if I do some other coaching activity somewhere else, then I'm still covered. because it's all part of the single sport. But if I was to add a second sport, then I would have to have another record.
If it falls under another umbrella body, yeah. If
Yeah,
you stop working for the SFA, for example, and start working for Bowls Scotland, then it's a...
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Joan has her hand up again. Joan?
Yes, yeah, this is the last one from me, Alistair. So another little bit of clarification. So we sometimes we support 5 young carers. So if they're going to an activity or they're having maybe an away week or whatever, we would offer transport if we're approached. Now, if the drivers are all PVG'd, would you still recommend doubling up?
Yes.
As a safeguard?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay, Alison has her hand up now. Alison?
Hello, good morning. Sorry, just unmuting myself there. Firstly, thank you very much. This has been a really, really useful session. My question to you was, I work with Rota Kids in our local primary school. And when we quite often do outdoor activities, we've been, like fence painting or weeding or that kind of thing. And we are looking at the possibility of grandparents coming to help us out in those circumstances. Would that grandparent or grandparents, would they also have to be PVG'd?
Are they're not just random elderly, they are grandparents of the children involved?
They're grandparents of children in that primary school, yes, correct.
I would suggest no, they don't need to be checked.
Excuse me. They do not? Okay, thank you. Because it was a question that was going to come up. Yeah, so, no. Okay, thank you very much, thanks.
Okay. Okay, I will just move on to this last couple of slides. This is more about the reporting of concern, if anything, that you see you feel a wee bit uneasy about. There are a number of things, again, in the Rotary Great Britain Ireland compliance section under safeguarding. There are the following appendices: forms and signs of abuse, dealing with complaints and accusations, and a referral form for suspicions or allegations of child or vulnerable adult abuse. It's worth probably making yourself familiar with those. We all hope that the situation never ever arises where we feel that there is a concern that we need to report. However, I certainly know of one, and exactly as was being spoken about by someone there, transporting a young carer. I know someone who was transporting a young carer, and that young carer, whilst in the car, divulged information that made the person feel very uncomfortable. So if there's a situation like that, and the thing in the bottom here in red is probably the main thing, your first duty is to remove that child from harm and report that activity to police or to social work. Don't attempt to question the child. Don't, try and establish any more of the facts. That's not what we are trained to do. There's none of us, or very few of us, will have that experience or ability to question that child. And it's important, if something has happened, that it's done by a professional. But also then, if it turns out that there is substance to it, then the Form A, the referral form, it's important that that's filled in about any suspicions or allegations. Pass it on to me. I will pass it to Rotary in Great Britain Ireland. They will file it just in case there's anything comes of it where we have to or we're questioned in any way. So it's really just to keep everything above board as far as insurance and law and things like that are concerned. We need to do that. But as I say, the first duty, if you're in any doubt at all about a child or a vulnerable adult, remove them from the place of harm and report it straight away. So that is all I wanted to speak about this morning.
Alistair, we've got one question, and it's a GDPR question for you. Can clubs get an updated list of the PVG holders?
They would have to explain to me why they wanted that list. If it's just out of general interest, then no. If they have a specific reason to know why a person, or if a person is a member of the PVG scheme, then yes, I can give them that information. I can't just generally give out lists of.
Sure. And one from Hillary. What about record keeping within a club? Again, it's a GDPR one.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. What the rule says is that records should only be kept as long as they're required. I think Hillary probably knows that inside out already. But I would suggest that the record keeping within a club is kept to a minimum. If you are keeping it, keep it somewhere locked. I think is the rule at the moment, and dispose of it as once you no longer require it. I think from memory, from the training that we did recently, that was the main things, wasn't it, Ken?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
And frankly, we don't know on an ongoing basis. The only thing we'll find out if there's somebody barred coming through after they've been approved. And there's a couple of hands up, Philip Ross and John Milne.
Do you think this is a presentation we should put on the district website?
Thank you for the offer. We accept.
If you want it up, Phil, yes, no problem. You're the
and the sort of follow-up was, and I may be sharing my ignorance, but is safeguarding training for district or a presentation like this on safeguarding planned?
For who, Phil?
For clubs, just like we've done this one where you kind of do safeguarding but I mean, maybe that's something that needs
I mean, this was something
for specific people to apply and get a certificate, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking back to my sports PVG, that we can't apply for PVG until we've gone through safeguarding training, and we have to repeat our safeguarding training every 3 years. But actually within the club, it was only a discussion around the table when you think, oh yes, we've got to do this and we've got to do that. And we think of it in kind of this negative, this people being bad issue, but actually most of safeguarding is about being sensible. It's like, actually, what happens if I have a puncture in my car halfway going where we are in the bus? Have I got contacts so that I can tell the parents are going to be late? Have I got a mechanism to get the car fixed? Is it going to be safe wherever they are? It's all those things that we don't think of. And I just wondered whether there ought to be some guidelines on that for clubs.
Yeah, I mean, I as far as I know, certainly in the sort of 10 years I've been involved with it, Phil, there has been no requirement for clubs to have people trained. You know, we make these sessions open and available to anyone that wants to come along. I don't know how we would get on making training compulsory for
I didn't mean compulsory, I just meant offering safeguarding, like one of these sessions.
Just for individual clubs?
Or like this session, just for the district.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can repeat these more often, Phil, certainly, and try and get more people to come along.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fantastic. I mean, I've learned quite a lot today, I think.
Anyone else?
Can I just have a quick follow-up question that comes from what Ken was saying and from what you were saying also? In terms of sharing information, once the certificate goes to the person who's then regulated, yeah?
Yes.
That person's a Rotarian. I've had different views expressed in different clubs about whether the club secretary is entitled to have a copy of that certificate or not, as opposed to just being told.
I think a copy, no. You shouldn't really be giving out copies of that certificate to anyone.
That's my thought.
I think it would be enough if the club wanted to see sight of it. I think would be fair, and possibly even take a note of the scheme membership number. Yeah, I think that's more than enough information, John.
That's what I've said in the past to people, Alistair. I find that helpful. Thank you.
And now John Allen, I think. John.
Great session there, Alistair. For putting the certificates together, my first question is, how would the clubs recognise what is a valid PVG certificate if they've never seen one before? So if it was a brand new club formed for the first time, would we need to get someone else to validate it that's had experience of it? Because it may actually lie. That's a great question, John, and I've never even thought about that before. That is a really good question. I mean, I could certainly get put onto the website a certificate, an actual certificate, but I would just have to blank out all of the members' information from it. But yeah, that is a good point, John, and I will make sure we do something to make sure there's a reference that clubs can check. And even if it's a case of that to provide some facility where we can punch in the number, where it might actually return back to, say, the person's surname, for example, so that say if the club secretary was the person that was coordinating, they would have some way of actually validating. Perhaps that's one for Disclosure Scotland to maybe actually see if they could do something there to help. There is a helpline where if you phone up, although they won't speak to you unless it's your certificate, unfortunately, but you can get information that way. They're very difficult. Not difficult to deal with, John. That's unfair to say that. They're very conscious of the GDPR around these things and making sure they don't give information out. But I'll let you pick that one up because that's it. I can see that's actually a one you're thinking, oh Christ, how do you deal with that? That's an interesting one. But I'll make sure that there's a dummy certificate available to check things against.
Alistair, I think there's one in the presentation we saw in Stirling.
The dummy.
I think so.
Right.
So okay.
I mean, I've got tons of certificates. Again, I'll just copy one. I just scan one and remove all of the data from it, and that way it'll not be watermarked with Disclosure Scotland across it.
And Sheila's got her hand up.
The way it's described there as well is the same point that I can see the process from what you've shown this morning. And from a club, a note goes up to yourself, you actually do the registration, but the form actually comes back to the individual who's been disclosure checked. So theoretically, someone could actually go and take the sample you're about to go and put up on the website and create their own, saying, look, I've got this, it's fine. So we need to think carefully around that one. I would suggest members actually ask Disclosure Scotland what they can do on that particular one, because I think there needs to be a way for Rotary to validate that, because at least we're actually raising the risk of it. Second question I've got, which might be a bit easier. We run a regular event every single year for 4 weekends a year. We have the Santa at Stirling Furniture over in Tillicoultry. So we have Santa there, who is PVG checked for vulnerable for children and adults. We have Santa's Little Helpers, which is the Rotarians usually, and usually the Rotarians' partners. They usually assist with that. And then we have people further afield directing people towards the grotto and saying, please go and get a photograph taken with Santa. So we've got a photographer there as well. Out of that entire group of people we've got around that event, remember there's a little grotto as well, who needs to be PVG checked here? Who needs to be on the register? I would suggest none of them, John. Okay. I'm genuinely, that would be my first thought, is that because my club are looking at doing something similar this year, and I've already been through the whole thought process that you're describing there, and I cannot find a reason to have any of those people PVG checked. There's no teaching, training, instruction involved in it. There's no direct supervision involved. There's no caring involved. I just can't see a reason for it.
Alistair, it's Robert from Buckhaven. The method just probably highlights the safeguarding element of that interaction and relationship in terms of that engagement is probably more important than the PVG.
Yeah, the good practice, Robert, I think is the way I would normally put it. But yeah, I agree with you there. is definitely a safeguarding thing.
Can I just check that if we're applying and we're doing it through Alistair Robb, who sits through the VST Volunteer Scotland, presumably Alistair then gets the response back from Volunteer Scotland to say that the person has been provided a disclosure. In other words, they're not barred. And that Alistair will then tell the relevant Rotary that the application was successful, or that the person's not barred.
I can do that if it's required, Sheila, yes.
I mean, presumably I, as the secretary, will not get the PVG back. The individual Rotarian applying will get a copy of his disclosure or her disclosure, and you will get told that you will also get a copy. So presumably you then tell the secretary and the individual Rotary Club that that person has now received a scheme membership.
I can do if that's required. I mean, normally I would say to clubs, you know, if the person is going to do regulated work, you should be asking them to look at, to see their certificate, for sight of their certificate, because you need to keep a record of that. As we spoke about.
I'm not authorised to keep that record through the scheme. I'm equivalent to you for another organisation, and I get all the scheme memberships and I hold them, but I don't show them to my board of trustees. I just tell them the person has a scheme.
I don't have a problem in doing that. I don't have a problem in telling clubs if they need that information. But what I'm saying is that the you know, the person they really need to speak to is the person that they've put through the disclosure, the PVG system.
Okay, that just gets back to the original question about how do we know it's a, you know, a proper record. Yeah. Anyway, moot point.
It's Robert Perry here. Can I have a word? I have dealt with the church in this one, and I get a record from they put in for the PVG and get it back. I get an email saying this person has been cleared.
Yeah,
that's it.
All you need.
And if there's somebody wrong, I get an email saying this person is not suitable. Please pass on that information.
Yeah.
Ask them to withdraw their application is the word used, rather than say you're not getting in.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Robert. That's
do that. So okay.
Am I not right in thinking that if we are going to ask people, individual Rotarians, to maybe be part of something like Rota Kids, where they're going to need a PVG, but prior to asking them that, we ought to inform them that we are exempt from the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, and give them the information that the fact that they are asking for a PVG, asking to do that they're laying themselves now open to me as a Rotarian, knowing that they've got a conviction.
We're getting into difficult territory there, Sheila.
Oh, well, there you go.
I mean, they are not exempt from the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, only for certain offences. So we have to be very careful how we word that, because there are...
Right, so the individual Rotarian, if for example, we start a Rotaract club, we're going to ask for volunteers to volunteer as a Rotaract, we will have to tell them that they've got to go through the PVG scheme, and they are barred. If they are barred from working with children, they must not apply, that it's an offence in law for them to apply to work with children.
Yeah.
And that we should be telling all our Rotarians that before we ask for volunteers.
If they're on the barred list, they will know that already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're on the barred list, they will know that information, that it is, you know, they will have been told already that it's illegal for them to make an application to do regulated work.
You may also find that they've got a conviction for doing something or a caution for doing something when they were 16 or 17. But we as a Rotary may consider, should they be working with children or not? Because you're going to get that information.
I won't get that information depending on what the thing is. I mean, genuinely, we've just been through this training, Sheila.
Right, okay, that's changed then.
They've changed an awful lot of things about how that works.
Okay, so that's changed since my training, because I used to get that information.
No, I mean, it really, there are certain things, the obvious things that we know about, you know, any offences against children, things like that, that there's no such thing as a spent conviction as far as the PVG scheme is concerned for those.
Yeah.
But for other things, the terms now run from, I think, 3 years on your record to 10 or 15 years on your record. Yeah. And some of them, if they're done when the person was very young, they won't appear on it at all. So I think that must be a change.
I think I'm just looking for difficulties where none exist.
In 10 years, it's never been an issue, Sheila. What we used to have was a self-declaration form to allow people to declare it beforehand. And it was completely pointless because in 10 years, I never had one person declare anything at all. So,
okay, thanks.
Yeah. John Allen again, please.
If a data subject actually goes to apply for a PVG and it comes back as you're not approved to actually be working with children or adults, do they have the ability to query that with Disclosure Scotland to understand why? For example, you might have actually been mismatched and you might have lived abroad and they've mixed you with the wrong record.
Yeah, I think there is a period of time you have to appeal against it, John. I think there is, yes.
And how long does the PVG registration last?
Good question. It lasts forever. It lasts until you decide to remove yourself from the scheme.
Actually, to be honest, you as the holder of the record should also tell Volunteer Scotland when somebody leaves.
Yeah, that's done.
Because I had to clear off all my dead people. Because I'd forgotten to do it, and quite a few had died.
But that is going to change. Part of this new legislation that's going to come into force next year, we hope, is that the PVG scheme will now be limited, I think, to 5 years.
Okay, right.
So I think that's going to change. What we don't know at the moment is whether it's going to require a complete resubmission to stay on the system, or if there's a possibility that's been discussed at the moment that they may just send a person an email saying, are you still doing regulated work? Yes, okay, we'll renew your thing for another 5 years. I don't know. So, but we'll wait and see about that. That's all going to come out in the next year or so.
Can I ask what actually happens if the club coordinator retires that's actually processes all of these, and say 3-4 years down the line, you've got another standard or another event where you might be checking PVG status. What sort of controls are in place at the club level to know who's got the PVG and who hasn't?
That would be up to the individual club and the record keeping, how they went about that, John. As I said to someone earlier on, Hillary, maybe, you know, we should be keeping these. If we do keep the records, keep them in a locked place. If we keep them online, keep them in a something that's password protected on your computer. If the person does leave Rotary and that information has to be passed to someone else, then you know, it's up to them to then follow the same procedure. Not every club even bothers keeping the record, John, because there are, you know, usually what you'll find is, and I've had this quite often, a message from a club saying such and such a person is has a PVG but can't find their certificate. What can they do about it? And there's a telephone number. They phone that phone number, give them their details, and they can get confirmation that their PVG is still valid and get the certificate number and things like that. So it's not the end of the world if the club decides not to keep the information. It is there for the people to get it.
So that would actually work quite well in the situation where a Rotary Club's hosting an event and other Rotarians from other clubs might want to assist with that event. You might want to is the check the person does have PVG status, and you can ask them to provide a copy of that to come across the club that's organising it to ensure they are covered.
Yeah, quite straightforward, and they're decent enough to deal with as long as they're sure who they're speaking to at Volunteer Scotland. They're pretty good.
Can I just remind people not to put anything on the Rotary template websites or anything? Even the members areas, they're not actually protected. They're all searchable from the internet. So if you're doing something secure, it really should be off of a Rotary system.
Thanks, Phil. If that's everything, we've run a bit over time here. So thank you all very much for your attention this morning. Obviously, there may well be, you go away and you'll start thinking of other things. I've certainly got a list of notes here of things that have been said that I need to follow up on this morning. Feel free to get in touch. If it's not a thing that I can answer, I will certainly find out where I can get the information for you and get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your sunny day, hopefully. Thank you.
Thanks, Alistair.
Alistair, bye.
Thank you. It's pouring
Bye.
here.
Yes, it's pouring here as well.